And here we go. Once again, we're here on a Wednesday night. Maybe morning for some of you, afternoon, whatever time of day, wherever you're tuning in from. Hello, welcome. It's good to be here with you. Take a moment to check in if you feel called to start a watch party or share. Naturally, the message will carry some power tonight. We'll have some time to sink into some silence and some meditation and coming into clarity within ourselves in a time where there are a plethora of distractions and happenings and emotions and experiences that are simply being called to witness and to bring our loving attention to them. And so if you are here and joining us, say hello in the comments. You can share, start a watch party, do whatever you need to do to get comfy, get connected, be in a place of just restfulness. Generally, when we can connect with a sense of restfulness within ourselves, we can be open. We can be resting in the middle of the plethora of perspectives in which we are, that are brought to our doorstep through our own mind and through the reflections of others that we come across moment to moment, day to day. And so, naturally, we are, at least in the Western world, really being put through the ringer, if you will. You know, there's quite a topic of things occurring, and naturally, this brings up pain. It brings up challenge. It brings up difficulty. It brings up really everything, because everything we're facing at this time, and ongoingly so, are things that we may have not had to face before, or we may have not faced to this capacity before. And anytime this is the case, naturally, it brings up many things for us to take a look at. And, you know, as a human living on this planet, as a human living this life, naturally our fundamental responsibility is to care for the oppressed, the sick, the poor, the suffering. This is a natural tendency that we have in the moments in which we're brought to situations where we are witnessing this, and it is in front of us. It is in our immediate reality. There's a natural loving intention. There is a natural call for righteousness and to treat another as we would desire to be treated. No matter who we are, where we're from, our race, our gender, our background, our religion, the beliefs we have or don't have, there is this natural tendency and spark that is within every being. Now, as we traverse, the timeline of our life or past lives, as we traverse the nature of time, there's a potential to become disconnected from this spark. There's a potential to become forgetful of this natural tendency and this spark within. This natural desire to care for all beings, and specifically those who are oppressed, those who are sick, those who are poor, and those who are suffering, which at this point in time on the planet, we tend to see that there are many groups and individuals that fall into these categories. And more often than not, if not all the time, this is already in our immediate reality. Even in a Western country, we can still walk out the door and see a homeless person on the street, or within our immediate family or friends, those who are suffering, those who are having difficulty. And so we are always faced with this reality. Now, whether or not we are willing to come to grips with this reality and embody ourselves into our life, to actually be in our body rather than in our head, in our mind, in the past and the future. If we are willing to come to this, then naturally we are ongoingly given this opportunity to bring a sense of loving compassion, to abide by the fundamental human law, which is to treat another as one would desire to be treated, the golden rule, which has been taught and spoken upon for thousands and thousands of years within every tradition, through every great teacher that has ever walked, has always spoken the same words in just different phrases, but it's pointed to the same thing. And so when this is ignored, naturally the universe and life has a way to bring it to our attention. And the longer it's ignored, the more extreme that will be. And so as we come to an acceptance, which is bringing our loving attention, bringing ourselves to feel the pains of another within our own body that we are designed to feel as a human that walks this planet, that has empathetic qualities and abilities and naturally can feel and is conscious of the pains of others and the pains of not just humans but animals and plants and all of existence. This is a natural, inborn, innate quality, a born quality that we all have access to. But as there is distraction, as there is trauma without a loving container for processing and healing, as there are thousands and thousands of years, generation upon generation of ignorance and delusion and avoidance and a lack of willingness to bring this loving attention to the moment-to-moment reality of the pains that we come across each day in many different beings of many different classes and groups and races and genders and etc. Then naturally we find ourselves in situations where these things have to be brought to light in an extreme fashion. And because we are part of Mother Earth and the nature of Earth being a living being, the Earth has a way of presenting us with these challenges in very extreme ways and very in-your-face type of ways that we are all presently facing at this time. And so we are all experiencing these waves of topics or social causes that are ignited through the feeling of these pains. Generally, in a collective sense, as we collectively feel these pains together, this ignites social causes that support specific groups. Because there is a power in detail and specificity. I can't even say it. Specifics. There is a power in that. Because we can get to the bottom of a situation and do the good work. And so we've had a number of these topics over the past year or so that have been, of course, filled with a lot of emotions connected to it, because when we are faced with a situation in our life in which blindsides us, we experience an intensity of emotion. And so when we observe the intensity of emotions in which are pinging and ponging and pendulum swinging all over the place right now, this is just simply a product of those facing the pains within themselves and the darkness within themselves and within naturally the collective, but it is all just within ourselves in a way in which naturally was unexpected. And this is why it is emotional. This is why it is so intense, because it is like a pressure cooker popping. And so collectively, we've gone through a number of these phases over the past year with the environment, with the COVID piece, which really was just a screaming out of nature to get our shit together. And now we're facing, in the Western hemisphere at least, the focus upon the oppression, racism of black people. And so each of these times in which we're faced with a specific social cause or topic, it is simply a call for loving attention. That is all. It is a call for loving attention where we can bring ourselves to witness and experience whatever is arising within our own body as we perceive and interact and experience the collective topic that is present. And depending on how much work we have done already, depending on how we have come within to see our own inner darkness, this will determine naturally the degree in which we experience the topic at hand. And for each of us, it will be vastly different because each of us are coming from vastly different paths and histories and lineages and races and cultures and all of this. But fundamentally, we are coming to a very basic pain, which is the disconnection from ourselves or the disconnection from love. A coming back to remember the golden rule, which is the fundamental teaching of all traditions, which points one to practice this so that they do not experience this suffering. This is why it is such a fundamental teaching, because all teachings are to support one in not experiencing suffering, and naturally when we do not listen, we experience suffering. So, in feeling the pains and the suffering of what have you, whatever social topic is arising, in this case, the racism and oppression of black people, we find ourselves coming into the layers within that reveal where we have not been practicing the golden rule. Where we have been ignorant, where we have been deluded, where we have been separate from ourselves in perceiving some other as separate from ourselves in some form, some way. And of course, this is not all conscious. There are naturally many subconscious aspects to this in which are ingrained within the social conditioning and programming that has existed on this planet for a very long period of time, dating far beyond just the more recent periods of racism of black people in this period. And these programs, these beliefs, these subconscious triggers, traumas, etc., are held deeply within our energetic anatomy on all layers of our being. And they are continually to be uprooted through our own spiritual practice, devotion, and focus. And naturally, in a time of collective awakening, when specific social causes arise, naturally this will expedite the process of this healing and transmutation as well. And as we simply bring our loving attention to whichever social cause is arising at whichever point in time, so that we can see within ourselves what has to be healed, what is needing to be brought to the surface, and naturally as we each do this, and as we focus upon this, we then become a light and a support for those around us. We become a light and support not only for the group who has been the victim of this oppression, but also the victimizers, and also those who are simply deluded or just unaware of the situation altogether. We become a light for all. Because awakening and the language of light speaks in only one language, and that is of love. And so, as we recognize that it does not matter what the social cause is, naturally all of it, which is a reflection of our own inner darkness, it is a reflection of our ignorance and delusion. And so, as we bring our loving attention to any specific social cause, it supports in the healing of all social causes, because we are living within time, and within time we go through sequences, and the sequence at this time is the current situation we are facing. Naturally, there are many other oppressed groups, many other those in suffering and sick and poor currently, that, of course, equally require this loving attention. Though, in a sense, we move with the waves without getting caught into the waves. This is important. And the more we hold this intention and this clarity and this silence within, where we do our inner work, naturally then we are speeding the process up. when we speed the process up, not by avoiding and not by recognizing that this is going to take time, but because we continue to come back to the present moment where we each have our individual reality. Now, just because some of us here are living in the Western Hemisphere, or some of us have social media and are aware of the fact of this occurring, we each are experiencing this vastly differently. And each of us also may already have, naturally, the social causes or the efforts to support those in oppressed situations or suffering that is a part of your day-to-day reality already. So a situation of this nature, in a sense, should not pull you away from the duties and responsibilities you already have and that you are already engaged in. Though it naturally will in some degree, because we are a moving collective consciousness, and this is continuously strengthening in its intensity. And as that continues to strengthen, naturally we will become more together, if you will, in our movements, which increases the power and the efficiency and the speed, if you will, of the healing and the return to self, the return to love. Though we cannot get caught up in the waves of emotion, because emotions are valid, it does not mean they are true. And we can only first and foremost come to that realization within our own being to recognize the plethora of moments and times where we have been deluded by our own emotions for whichever reason. Inevitably then returning back to a clear sight and a clear seeing in which is balanced and whole and able to see both sides and able to see the clear perspective in any specific situation. And of course, because these social causes naturally are filled with a lot of emotional charge, it is very easy to become distracted and pulled within the plethora of what others are doing in a situation, when in reality the only thing one can do is to become whole and complete within themselves, to come to a loving intention within themselves, and to do the best with the best intention they can, the proper actions that they feel are just and they feel are required and that they feel are an expression of how they can best show up. Because again, this will be vastly different, and it is not a requirement to do anything in particular other than to resolve the nature of one's inner darkness. This is the highest service that anyone can be in this time. So I trust that this message at least brings a certain clarity to the situation at hand. Naturally, I am not of black descent, nor have I ever walked a moment in my life in a black person's shoes. So what I can say about the specific situation in this case naturally is going to be limited from this perspective. And yet at the same time, we have to stay grounded within our own being to recognize we all have value in this situation. We all have a clear ability to bring love into this situation. We all have dealt with our own pains and our own traumas in various different ways that are not to be compared. This is not a time of comparison. It's when we get caught in comparison, naturally, that we find ourselves in the plethora of opinion and delusion, and creating more distance or more separation in a time where naturally this is not going to be of much use. And of course, from another perspective, all can be of use. And so as long as we are continuing to focus simply on our own journey, this is all we can do, then we can remain in a sense of peace and contentment even while chaos is present. And we can recognize that it is our birthright to be within this sense of peace and contentment and joy, no matter the situation. This is our highest service. Of course, the egoic mind will point otherwise. It will experience the guilt and shame. If others are experiencing pain, then we must experience this pain. We are to hold space to experience pain. We are vessels of an energetic anatomy, naturally, that will transmute pain. So we welcome this pain. We allow it to be felt, though it does not need to be held on to. It can be observed as quickly as it arises, as quickly as it falls. And the more we come to know this and come to embody this perception, naturally we will not be afraid to move through any of these situations of these social causes and collective healings that will continue to occur, and likely continue to occur with greater and greater levels of intensity. And this is naturally the time in which has been spoken by endless scriptures and traditions and teachings for a very long period of time. So now we are here living it. And what a gift that is. That we can all come to embody this love and be purified, be erupted by life. We're being burned in the flame of life, which is and can be extremely painful. And for those who have already embarked on this path and have been walking this path for some time, naturally you are being called into higher levels of responsibility because there's an ability to hold higher levels of light. And this doesn't necessarily look like anything in particular. It doesn't mean you have to come and speak like this. It doesn't mean you have to go and teach or do anything outside of what you feel is natural, what you feel is in alignment with your natural gift, and what naturally arises within your moment-to-moment reality, because this is really where it makes the most difference. How do we show up in our moment-to-moment life? How have we already showed up in our moment-to-moment life, let alone when a social cause comes on our doorstep? So this is the message for today. If you're coming in late, I'd highly recommend to rewatch this, naturally. I mean, if you're here and receiving this message, you could share this as well. I mean, I'm sure there's many that can benefit from this. I look to be as clear as I possibly can in a time where there is much distraction and much emotion that can bring us into one side or another of the fence, when in reality we are designed and destined to walk the middle way, to come to a loving contentment which can see all sides of the coin. It can entertain all perspectives. It can welcome all pains and all points of view, because there's no requirement to project one's own point of view or perspective on anything else or anyone other than themselves. And this is where endless joy and peace have always been. Endlessly available to be accessed, no matter the situation, no matter the time. And the more it is accessed, the more that one can be of service in times specifically of this nature where those in pain, those in suffering are calling simply for loving attention. They're calling to be witnessed. And so we do this in all of our moments. Today I was out in the city, and I was at the beach, and I was just around before this session, and naturally my attention had been brought to many more black people than I had normally seen in recent weeks. And of course, I don't believe that this is naturally any different than normal in my city or in my place. But of course, consciousness, the attention, is placing itself on what is relevant, what is the topic. So the universe has a beautiful way of just, in our immediate reality, giving us what we need to simply observe. There's nothing that needs to be done. We observe. We observe what naturally arises, and we act in that naturalness. When we say nothing needs to be done, it does not mean we're apathetic. It means we're surrendered to the natural arisings of our moment-to-moment reality, which, when we see an animal hurting, or we see a child about to cross the street when a car is going, or when we see someone that needs help picking up their groceries, or we see someone that's sad that needs a hug, or we see people playing music and dancing, or we see a beautiful sunset. All of these things call a natural action. They call our natural attention. Nothing, in a sense, needs to be done because we've just seen one side of the coin, and the other side of the coin is revealing itself to us. We see the sunset, we watch it. We see the old lady needing help with her bags, we help her pick it up. We see people dancing with music, maybe we dance, It's such a natural revealing. So when we humble ourselves to get out of the way, and again return to teachings that have been here for a very long period of time, endlessly, there's nothing new under the sun. The teachings have always been the same. Just because we have forgotten and become deluded, this does not mean those teachings have changed. So we come back to those teachings and we humble ourselves to those teachings and we come to recognize them and see, oh, this is what it was always pointing to. This will help me navigate a situation that I've never experienced before, maybe like this one. And because we've passed the tipping point, it seems like every moment will be that. So yes. Hopefully we can feel this message in our heart naturally. This is where we always return to and come back to. And again, if you feel called to share this message, then here's one side of the coin. Where we can simply rest here and be with ourselves here. And I feel we'll come into this now, where we can place our attention upon our heart. If you'd like to close your eyes, you can. If not, that's also fine. And let's simply come to rest in what is present, what is here. If there's pains present, if there's discomfort, if there's density in the body, we can bring our attention there. Giving ourselves the time and space to simply feel the pains of oneself, the pains of another, the pains of a collective energy that we're all currently experiencing. Wherever it arises in the body, we don't need to do anything with it other than just simply letting it be there, letting it arise, letting it be felt. And continuing to return to that simple essence of being in the center of the heart, where everything can be pulled back into. From this vantage point in the heart, it's as if we're being all-inclusive of everything and everyone, and every emotion, every thought, every sensation. Nothing is discarded, nothing is pushed away, everything is welcomed here. Let yourself be erupted by all of these energies, all of these sensations, allowing them to flow through you as they enter through the body and naturally look to move and potentially exit or transmute or just simply reveal things to you that you did not already see. And coming back through the layers as you dissolve the separation of your thoughts and memories and projections and beliefs and judgments and criticisms, comparisons, assumptions, expectations. All of this is pulled back. Continuing to move to the center of the chest and the heart, where we can connect to that sense of being, where everything comes back to, everything is dissolved back into. As we simultaneously allow for everything that presently wants to reveal itself to reveal itself. Naturally, the excess energy can exit through the top of the head or through the feet or simply disperse through the body as everything is brought back to that light of awareness, the light of your loving attention. Naturally, all of these aspects within your being can be dissolved. We return to this natural essence, this natural state of being. And we dissolve back into this silence. Coming to rest here. It's in this space where we connect to this true essence, this true witness, that we can welcome all of the pains, all that is meant to be revealed, all of the subconscious darkness that naturally continues to reveal itself can be brought to the surface. It's in the space where we're not differentiating between the pains of another body or the pains of this body, or the pains of this life or the pains of another life. All of it is inclusive. Because we see that everything that is revealed within our reality, our walking life, naturally is our own. It is our own reflection that is being mirrored back to us. And so our devotional stance is to be willing to experience it all. And to come to face with it all. To purify it all. To be the vessel in which purifies it all. This is the highest service that we can be. And this is the dilution of the lower self into the higher self. Lower purpose into the higher purpose. It is us returning to heaven from hell. And this is what will continue to bring us back to the true essence, our natural essence of joy, of peace, of contentment, of balance, even while the chaos and the pain and suffering of everything around us continues to arise. The moment in which it arises in your field, in your perception, naturally the work is already begun. This is the devotional stance. This is the devotional way. To be burned up by life, in a sense. Everything is designed and destined as an awakening. Everything is revealing deeper levels of awakening, deeper levels of clarity, deeper levels of truth and love and compassion. And so I didn't want this to be too long today. Just a simple, short, to the point message that hopefully supports us in continuing the same work. For those that are connected here, naturally, there's those who are doing the work. And we're all doing it in varying degrees. And as we each individually intensify the work we're willing to do, naturally we reap the rewards of such. And everyone around us also reaps those rewards. And as we all take this responsibility on our shoulders, naturally we will continue to move through these arisings of social causes and injustices and transmute them back to natural, universal law. Because as much as it is about justice at this time, it seems it is more about us returning to our natural way. A natural way of humanity, a natural way of universal law that naturally upholds itself like gravity. And this will only come when each being takes responsibility for their own experience and brings back their power and their sovereignty within their own experience to make conscious and righteous choice. And to come back to the golden rule, which is the simplest of all teachings, to treat another as one would desire to be treated. And of course, we can only know what that really is as we come to know ourselves. So it's a simultaneous inward and outward process. The depth of our inner work and our meditations and our practice and the depth of our outer work becomes one and the same. It becomes one and the same as we rest in the middle. So what an important time to rest in the middle, to not be a victim of passing through the pendulum, endlessly controlled by the emotions of everything around oneself. This is part of the process of coming into sovereignty and freedom, is to be able to navigate that experience consciously. And this is the gift we're all being given at this time. With that, I will put out the call if there are any specific questions or comments or any of the above. Naturally, if you've benefited from this, I'd highly recommend to rewatch if you didn't catch it all, or share. Thank you for those who did share this. I mean, naturally, the message shall carry far and wide. It's the teachings of all times. It's nothing new. I'm not really speaking anything new. It is simply a message that needs to be reiterated over and over and over again, until we come to our wits. So be vigilant in this time and discerning of what's being shown and sent around in social media. Stay true to your own path. Stay true to yourself. Stay true to what feels natural on your own journey. Because it is often that we can get pressured in these situations. We can feel pressured. We can feel the pulls of what everyone else is doing or what everyone else feels or thinks or etc. And be like the tree, that old tree that's been there for an endless amount of time. Come to know that groundedness, that strength like a mountain, and experience that peace that exists within oneself that is not connected to anything else. Come to that place of silence so that can be tasted over and over. And then as, the world intensifies in its purge, in its purification, in its burning up, we can continue to remain in that place of clarity, in that place of awareness. And this is the requirement of all beings. It doesn't matter what the outcome of protests are. It doesn't matter whether controlling powers give up or don't give up. It doesn't matter so much of these things. The same issues will always be faced through an egoic lens. And so as we move through these pains and we hold space for others to move through these pains, then we can move past race and creed and religion and dogma and gender. We can move past all of these things and come to the source of ourselves. And then this is truly where diversity can flourish. It is not a dissolution of diversity. It is a remembrance of the true essence of who we are. And that gives way for a clear embodiment. It gives way for a natural living of one's diversity. We always come back to things like human design and things of this nature because we could say that that is the fundamental aspect of ourselves in our incarnation, because we have our things like our past and our race and our gender and what we look like and where we're from in our human experience. But on the deepest fundamental aspect of our human experience, it will be our design. It will be our natural energetic design. Astrology is similar and personality systems are similar. Human design just has a certain accuracy to it that really gives us a clarity on who we naturally already are, who we've always been in this human life. And as we realize the true essence of our non-dual nature, the true awareness, the true source of all, then we connect very clearly with this individual expression, and we live that individual expression without judgment and without guilt and without shame. We live that fully. We live that in a space of true love with ourselves. So, I love you all. Thank you for being here. It's truly the time. It really is. That's correct, Andrea. That's a beautiful sentiment there. Again, if there's any other comments or questions or anything, for me, there's not too much else that needs to be said, at least on this. If there's anything else that comes up, all of the confusions of why unrighteousness occurs and things like, in this case, racism and all of that, there's just a fundamental wound, and that is the distancing and separation from oneself, from source. That is the fundamental wound. It's the fundamental trauma. It's the core of it all. And it is expressed and revealed as a symptom within all of the worldly traumas that we experience within our life and past lives and karmic and generational. And as we spoke about the imprints of our belief structures and our systematic privileges and all of these things, these are all symptoms of that fundamental wound. They are aspects of our relative reality that are to be moved through. And naturally, this is why we are given countless tools, and we are to continue to come back to these tools to help with that healing and support with that healing. And it will continue to bring us to the doorstep of the fundamental wound, the fundamental healing, which is the uprooting of the false identity. Right? The remembrance of the true identity, the true self, the embodiment of the Christ self, the 12th dimensional avatar self, the true source that inhabits all. And as beings inhabiting these bodies, we are given the gift to express the highest of source in the highest of incarnations, which is the angelic human, the 12th dimensional avatar angelic human, which some beings of our past have embodied in its fullness and express the teachings that naturally come forth through one who is perceiving from this vantage point and from this energy. And in a sense, we all have access to this, and we're all remembering and healing through our own journey that we have access to this. So this is a beautiful thing. I feel I'll call it a night there. Please do share this video if you haven't already. Tag some friends. Comment, do whatever you need to do to boost the algorithm. It's always a nice thing to do in these times as the algorithm gets more and more intensive. And I send my blessings to all those experiencing suffering in this time. And in specific, in honoring of our Black friends and counterparts all around the world, not just in the Western world. everywhere. And all living beings, naturally, that are experiencing any level of suffering, sickness, poverty, oppression, etc. Wonderful. Deep love to all of you. I will see you when I see you. Be well.